Toxic people often mistake an INFJ's calmness for weakness, but they couldn't be more wrong. Behind that quiet gaze and gentle demeanor lies a mind that sees through manipulation like glass. In this video, we will look at the various ways INFJs outsmart toxic people. We will see why INFJs don't fight back with anger or revenge, but fight with silence, insight, and emotional precision. Are you an INFJ who is feeling lost and out of alignment with your true purpose? The INFJ Purpose Compass will help you find clarity, harness your gifts, and align you with your purpose. Click the link in the description of this video to get access now. The first way INFJs outsmart toxic people is by mastering the art of observation. They rarely react immediately when provoked. Instead, they step back and analyze the situation from every possible angle. Toxic individuals often thrive on chaos and emotional reactions, but an INFJ refuses to give them that satisfaction. While others might lose their temper, the INFJ remains composed, quietly assessing the manipulator's intent. They notice tone changes, micro-expressions, and inconsistencies in behavior. This awareness gives them a unique advantage. They can predict the toxic person's next move before it happens. By understanding the underlying motivations, they make the manipulator's tactics useless. INFJs are empaths with razor-sharp intuition. They can read energy in a room like a second language, feeling shifts in mood before words are even spoken. Toxic people rely heavily on confusion and emotional manipulation to control others, but INFJs can see through those layers almost effortlessly. When someone tries to guilt-trip them or twist their words, the INFJ doesn't argue. They simply allow the person to reveal their true colors while quietly withdrawing their emotional investment. This is one of the INFJ's most disarming tactics, their quiet withdrawal. Toxic people crave control and attention. When they no longer receive emotional energy from the INFJ, their power begins to crumble. Another subtle weapon INFJs wield is silence. While silence may seem passive, in the INFJ's hands, it becomes a calculated form of strength. They know that words can be twisted, but silence cannot. When a toxic person tries to provoke them into confrontation, the INFJ's calm demeanor frustrates them. Silence makes the manipulator question their own influence. The INFJ's stillness becomes unnerving because it denies the toxic person the drama they feed on. This non-reactive stance doesn't just protect the INFJ. It dismantles the manipulator's illusion of control. INFJs are also masters of emotional detachment. Their empathy allows them to understand toxic people deeply, but their intuition teaches them when to draw the line. Once they recognize that a person's intentions are harmful, they begin to emotionally disengage. They might still appear kind, polite, and composed on the surface, but internally, they've cut the emotional cord. They stop allowing the toxic person's behavior to affect their peace. This quiet withdrawal often confuses manipulators, who sense something slipping but can't pinpoint what. By the time they realize the INFJ has mentally and emotionally checked out, it's too late. The INFJ has already regained their inner power. What makes INFJs exceptional in handling toxic people is their ability to maintain their moral integrity. Toxic people often try to drag others into their chaos, but INFJs stand firm in their values. They refuse to become bitter or hateful, no matter how much they've been wronged. They know that fighting fire with fire only creates more destruction. Instead, they rise above by focusing on peace, growth, and authenticity. Their strength lies not in confrontation, but in self-mastery. They understand that the greatest revenge is not retaliation. It's emotional freedom. Toxic people expect resistance. They don't expect transcendence. When the INFJ chooses peace over vengeance, it exposes the manipulator's emptiness. INFJs also use strategic empathy, understanding toxic people not to excuse their behavior, but to predict and neutralize it. They study the person's insecurities, their triggers, and the patterns of their manipulation. Once they've mapped the emotional terrain, they navigate it with precision. If a toxic person thrives on guilt, the INFJ learns not to apologize unnecessarily. If the person uses gaslighting, the INFJ documents reality internally, refusing to be swayed by lies. They play the long game, quietly accumulating clarity until the manipulator's web collapses under its own deception. To outsiders, it might look like the INFJ simply let things go, but in truth, they orchestrated their peace with quiet intention. When the time comes, INFJs know how to walk away with elegance and finality. They don't announce their departure or seek closure from the person who hurt them. They create it themselves. Toxic individuals depend on the emotional bond to reassert control, but when an INFJ decides to detach, that bond dissolves completely. Their exit is silent but powerful. They may disappear without a word, leaving the manipulator bewildered and powerless. This quiet ending is the INFJ's final act of outsmarting. They don't destroy the toxic person. They remove themselves from the game entirely. In doing so, they win not just the battle, but their peace. Another overlooked strength of the INFJ is their ability to heal themselves internally without external validation. Toxic people seek to break others emotionally, to make them doubt their worth or sanity. But INFJs, once wounded, retreat inward to rebuild from the inside out. Their self-reflective nature allows them to find meaning even in pain. They process betrayal not by lashing out, but by transforming it into wisdom. This emotional alchemy ensures that toxic people never truly win. Every scar becomes a lesson, every heartbreak a source of insight. The INFJ emerges stronger, calmer, and even more discerning about the kind of energy they allow into their space. INFJs also set invisible boundaries that are nearly impossible for toxic individuals to cross. These boundaries are not shouted or written down. They are energetically enforced. Through their calm confidence and emotional self-control, INFJs communicate without words. You cannot reach me anymore. Toxic people sense this shift immediately. It's the moment when the manipulator realizes that the INFJ is no longer emotionally available. Their words lose power, their guilt trips fall flat, and their influence fades into silence. The INFJ has reclaimed their emotional territory, not through confrontation, but through quiet authority. What unsettles toxic people about INFJs is their quiet unpredictability. While manipulators thrive on being able to read and control others, INFJs are psychological enigmas. One moment they may seem warm, understanding, and deeply engaged, and the next, they become emotionally unreachable. This unpredictability isn't a game for them, it's self-preservation. INFJs intuitively know that revealing too much gives toxic people ammunition, so they master the balance of openness and mystery. They give enough to maintain surface harmony, but never enough to be exploited. This leaves manipulators constantly guessing, never quite sure where they stand or how to regain the upper hand. The more they try to decode the INFJ, the more they realize that the INFJ cannot be easily read, because their mind and motives operate on a higher emotional frequency. Another brilliant way INFJs outsmart toxic individuals is through their subtle use of empathy as redirection rather than absorption. At their core, INFJs are natural empaths, but they eventually learn that absorbing negativity only drains their energy. Instead, they start to redirect it. When someone tries to project anger, guilt, or blame onto them, the INFJ doesn't absorb it. They reflect it back with calm, compassionate detachment. Their tone remains soft, their words remain measured, but their emotional walls are solid. This disarms toxic people because they can't manipulate someone who refuses to emotionally engage. The INFJ's calm presence acts like a mirror, forcing the manipulator to confront their own ugliness. Many toxic people retreat when faced with that reflection because they can't stand the exposure of their own toxicity. INFJs also have a remarkable ability to use logic to outmaneuver emotional manipulators. While their dominant function is intuition, their secondary function, introverted thinking, allows them to analyze situations with precision when needed. They can step out of their feelings and evaluate facts, patterns, and inconsistencies. When confronted with lies, gaslighting, or half-truths, the INFJ doesn't argue emotionally. They bring quiet logic into play, pointing out contradictions with such calm clarity that the toxic person feels trapped by their own words. There's no yelling, no drama, just quiet reasoning that dismantles deceit piece by piece. Toxic individuals who thrive on emotional chaos find themselves disarmed by this rational stillness. They realize they can't twist the INFJ's perception because the INFJ has already anchored themselves in truth. INFJs have the ability to weaponize time. They understand that truth always reveals itself, and toxic behavior cannot stay hidden forever. So instead of reacting impulsively, they wait. They give people enough time and space to expose their true nature. INFJs rarely need to accuse anyone. They simply let patterns unfold. This patience often frustrates manipulators who crave immediate reactions, but it serves as the INFJ's secret strength. Over time, the toxic person's mask inevitably slips, and when it does, everyone around can finally see what the INFJ saw from the beginning. The INFJ's quiet endurance becomes vindication, not because they sought revenge, but because they trusted their intuition and time to do the work. When INFJs reach a point of emotional maturity, they also develop the power of selective vulnerability. They understand that not everyone deserves access to their inner world. Toxic people often manipulate through intimacy, gaining trust, and using shared secrets as leverage. The INFJ, once burned, becomes far more careful with what they reveal. They still appear open and genuine, but what they share is chosen carefully, never impulsively. They can listen deeply without mirroring that same level of self-disclosure. This makes them seem connected yet untouchable, a paradox that confuses manipulators. The toxic person may feel like they're close to the INFJ, yet they can't find a single piece of personal information to weaponize. That's not accidental. That's strategy wrapped in grace. Another way INFJs outsmart toxic people is by outgrowing them. Instead of wasting time trying to fix someone who thrives on pain, they turn inward and invest that energy into self-evolution. They channel their frustration into creativity, personal growth, or helping others who truly value their energy. This shift in focus infuriates toxic individuals because it denies them what they crave most, attention. While the manipulator obsesses over control, the INFJ quietly rebuilds their world, stronger, wiser, and far beyond the toxic person's reach. It's not vengeance, it's transcendence. The INFJ's light becomes their escape, and that light, in turn, exposes the manipulator's darkness even more starkly. INFJs also excel at emotional redirection. When a toxic person tries to draw them into conflict, they respond with unexpected calm or compassion. Instead of defending themselves, they might respond with a simple truth like, "I'm sorry you feel that way," or "That's an interesting perspective." These phrases seem harmless, but they completely neutralize the toxic person's power. The manipulator expects a fight, not understanding. This calm deflection takes away their emotional leverage and forces them to face the futility of their outburst. The INFJ's empathy becomes a trap, not out of cruelty, but because it dissolves manipulation by refusing to feed its fire. They also outsmart toxic people through their deep self-awareness. INFJs are constantly reflecting, analyzing, and growing. They question their own motives, fears, and triggers, ensuring that no manipulator can use those vulnerabilities against them. This level of introspection makes them nearly immune to emotional exploitation. Toxic people thrive on exploiting insecurity, but INFJs know themselves too well to be easily swayed. They understand their flaws, own them, and continue to refine themselves quietly. This inner strength creates an unshakable foundation that manipulation cannot penetrate. The more a toxic person tries to find a weakness, the more they realize that the INFJ's self-knowledge is impenetrable armor. INFJs also understand the strategic power of peace. They realize that not every battle requires a response. Their silence and inner calm are not weaknesses, they are shields. A toxic person's chaos becomes useless when faced with someone who refuses to engage. INFJs understand that peace is both a boundary and a statement. You can't control me anymore. By maintaining serenity, even in the midst of chaos, they deny toxic people the reaction they crave most, emotional chaos. Their refusal to descend into negativity becomes their ultimate act of quiet defiance. At the heart of it all, The INFJ's ability to outsmart toxic people without fighting lies in one profound truth. They do not seek to win the argument. They seek to win their peace. They understand that some victories are not about conquering others, but about mastering themselves. Toxic people live in a world of ego and control, but INFJs live in a world of depth and meaning. They don't destroy their enemies. They simply evolve beyond their reach. And that, more than any confrontation or comeback, is the ultimate form of victory, the kind that leaves the toxic person confused, powerless, and haunted by the quiet strength of someone they could never truly manipulate. What many people don't realize is that INFJs have a hidden skill, the ability to use distance as a form of wisdom. They understand that proximity determines influence. So when someone proves toxic, the INFJ doesn't argue or announce their departure. They simply begin to drift. Conversations become shorter, replies become less emotional, and their presence starts to fade quietly. To the toxic person, this feels confusing because nothing dramatic happened. Yet, the INFJ has already begun to reclaim their peace. They know that distance is not punishment, it's protection. And by withdrawing gently, they deny the manipulator the satisfaction of conflict, while silently regaining control of their energy. Another powerful tactic INFJs use is transforming pain into purpose. Instead of letting the cruelty of others harden them, they transmute their experiences into understanding and empathy. When a toxic person wounds them, it becomes fuel for insight, creativity, and growth. They might write, create art, mentor others, or simply use their experience to help someone else heal. This transformation disarms toxicity entirely. It takes something meant to destroy them and turns it into light. A toxic person can't win against someone who uses pain as raw material for wisdom. That's why INFJs rarely stay broken for long. Their spirit naturally rebuilds stronger after every emotional storm. INFJs also know how to use truth as a quiet weapon. They don't exaggerate, accuse, or manipulate back. They simply speak the truth calmly and clearly, often in moments when others least expect it. Toxic people thrive in distortion, but a single well-timed truth from an INFJ can shatter entire illusions. Because INFJs have such strong credibility and insight, when they speak, people listen. Their words carry weight precisely because they rarely use them recklessly. When they expose a manipulator with gentle truth, it hits harder than any shouting ever could. It's the type of truth that echoes long after they've left the room. INFJs also outsmart toxic people by living intentionally happy lives. Toxic people hate to see those they try to control or break thriving. The INFJ's greatest revenge, if it can be called that, is to genuinely flourish. After detaching, they pour their energy into meaningful projects, deep friendships, and quiet joys that feed their soul. They begin to glow again, not for attention, but because peace and authenticity make them radiant. The toxic person, who once thrived on their pain, watches helplessly as the INFJ's happiness becomes proof that their manipulation failed. There is no greater defeat for a controller than realizing their victim no longer thinks about them. INFJs also possess an incredible ability to blend emotional intelligence with subtle boundary setting. They don't need to announce their limits. They express them through energy, tone, and consistency. A toxic person may test those boundaries repeatedly, but the INFJ's firmness remains gentle and unwavering. They don't argue about their limits. They enforce them with quiet conviction. If a manipulator yells, the INFJ stays calm. If they guilt trip, the INFJ smiles kindly and changes the subject. Over time, the toxic person realizes that emotional coercion no longer works, but their tactics are losing potency. The INFJ wins not by confrontation, but by being unmovable in serenity.